The Commonwealth of Massachusetts had plenty of money in its failed attempt to convict Karen Read in 2 trials, losing on all major counts. But now criminals are being let out on the streets in Boston because the Commonwealth doesn't have enough money to provide constitutionally required court-appointed attorneys. Huh? Yes, the world watched through 2 trials and a long prosecution as the Commonwealth of Massachusetts went after Karen Read, even spending $566,000 on an outside special prosecutor. But now, yeah, it's true. I'm going to show you the headlines that 100+ cases, criminal cases in the Boston municipal courts were thrown out because there isn't enough money in the Commonwealth, supposedly, to pay the constitutionally required court-appointed attorneys. Hi, I'm attorney Andrew Myers. This is About the Law, and this is something that's kind of disgraceful, I would have to say, and we're going to look into it right now. If you don't believe me, here is a newspaper article that was in the Boston Herald explaining the situation. And the headline is 100+ Boston criminal defendants have their cases tossed due to an attorney strike. And there is Boston Municipal Court Chief Judge Tracy Lee Lyons on Tuesday as she had to dismiss more than 100 cases due to a Supreme Judicial Court order as bar advocates continue their work stoppage. Now, the Supreme Judicial Court is what the highest court is called in Massachusetts. It's the equivalent of the Supreme Court in the United States. And bar advocates are the people that are appointed by the judges to step in as required under the Sixth Amendment to provide counsel. You've heard the old saying in the movies or TV, when a person is arrested, you have a right to remain silent. You have a right to a court-appointed attorney. If you can't afford an attorney will be provided for you. Well, that's not so at this point in Massachusetts. More than 100 Boston Municipal Court criminal defendants had their charges dismissed due to lack of legal representation, including a number of serious assault and domestic battery cases. Quote, "Today is an unprecedented tragedy for the victims," Suffolk County District Attorney Amelia Singh said at the end of the Boston Municipal Court hearing. By the end of the roughly 3-hour hearing, about 125 cases were dismissed, and only 3 were preserved by securing a defense attorney. The dismissals present a clear and continuing threat to public safety, according to Suffolk District Attorney spokesman James Borghesani in a statement following the hearing. I think I've had some dealings with that. That name sounds very familiar to me. James Borghesani, speaking for the Suffolk County District Attorney, quote, "Our prosecutors and victim witness advocates are working extremely hard to keep victims and other impacted persons updated on what is happening with their cases," Borghesani continued. "These are difficult conversations. We remain hopeful that a structural solution will be found to address the causal issues here and to prevent any repeat." And before we get into the Lally proposal, which we will dig into a little bit more depth on that, I want to take you to a report that was broadcast by Boston 25 and their criminal reporter, Bob Ward. That didn't come out right, Bob. Criminal reporter who specializes in crime and does his own show called New England's Most Wanted. His name is Bob Ward, and he's right on top of crime. And I think he was shaking his head as much as the rest of us are.
I'm Bob Ward in Boston, where a real legal crisis is taking root. More than 100 criminal cases now dismissed as public defenders refuse to take on new cases in a dispute over money.
So that courthouse that he's standing in front of, I'm almost positive, is the same courthouse that we use as our background here on this channel. It is the John Adams courthouse, and it houses a lot of different courts at a lot of different levels in Boston. It's right downtown. It's across the street from Boston City Hall. And this is the judge going through the caseload. I mean, they have a large caseload in all of those courts in Boston. And here is the judge we spoke of before going through them all on this fateful day.
At Boston Municipal Court in a special hearing, Chief Justice Tracy Lee Lyons dismisses more than 100 criminal cases.
You know, that's not that unusual to see a pile of cases like that. Back when I did do a fair amount of criminal defense in Massachusetts, not so much anymore. It wasn't unusual to see an assistant district attorney walk into a district court with 20 of those under their arm, and you would identify yourself and say which file you're on, and they would have to shuffle around and file and look at the file, find the file, look at the file. We talk about the file, but there's the pile that came up that particular fateful day.
The action taken as public defender's work stoppage and a dispute over wages takes a dramatic turn.
This case will be dismissed without prejudice.
This legal crisis began in May when court-appointed attorneys stopped taking on new cases, saying the state's $65 an hour rate is an unlivable wage.
$65 an hour for the court-appointed attorneys, and they are paid for, of course, by the taxpayers. Just to put that in reference, you know, I went online and I found that the general legal services average in Massachusetts is anywhere between $450 and $700. That's for an average typical lawyer in Boston, but statewide for general legal services, it's $318 an hour. That's what it costs to hire an attorney per hour. The Commonwealth is paying only $65 an hour. And, you know, the attorneys that do that type of work are saying, look, you know, we could be doing other work and that's just not enough. Now, to be true, the fee of the attorney depends on a lot of different factors, where you are, how much competition there is. You know, in a rural area, you are going to tend to find lower attorney rates, but it's also based on the type of matter and the experience of the attorney. I mean, the Karen Reed attorneys, for example, her top shelf attorneys normally would have charged a whole lot more. Somebody just getting out of law school, sure, they're going to be on the lower end of the spectrum. But according to the website contractcounsel.com in Massachusetts, the average is between, based on all the factors I just talked about, the type of matter you're talking about and the experience of the attorney. According to that website, the average in Massachusetts is between $150 and $350. So $65, which the Commonwealth is paying, is far below the average. So we'll get into the politics of it in a minute, but let's finish up with this report.
They say neighboring states pay their public defenders twice as much. An SJC justice ordered the release of any indigent defendant held longer than 7 days.
So people that were being held behind bars, we can't call them criminals, defendants who are presumed innocent until found guilty, they were being held and they were not provided, as the Constitution requires, a defense counsel.
And she ruled that all charges be dropped if any indigent defendant case is older than 45 days. At BMC, most of the charges dropped were for nonviolent crimes. However, several involved assaults on police officers, domestic violence assaults, and the use of dangerous weapons. In Fall River, Governor Healy called for lawmakers to act.
I think from reading other news sources, she was down in Fall River for a ribbon cutting or something of that nature. And so, you know, while they're letting criminals out on the street in Boston,
this is a matter of public safety, and so they've got to sort this out and resolve this.
Boston defense attorney Phil Tracy agrees that something has to change.
People are going to get hurt, wives, robberies are going to take place by guys who were already in jail, and now they're out.
In a statement, the Suffolk County DA's office said the case dismissals today, with many more expected in coming days and weeks, present a clear and continuing threat to public safety. We remain hopeful that a structural solution will be found to address the causal issues here and prevent any repeat. But right now, there is no deal on the table to raise the rate for public defenders. In Boston, I'm Bob Ward for your local station, Boston 25 News.
And so that is the story going on in Boston. And as Mr. Ward had pointed out, this has been brewing since May. Actually, it's been brewing a lot longer than that. But the attorneys that work for the CPCS, which is the Committee for Public Counsel Services, which provides the court-appointed attorneys, they finally in May said, look, we're just not going to do it anymore. And the legislature has been pretty much sleeping. And we're going to talk about that. But let's get back to that article I was going through. The Lally Protocol, the Boston Municipal Court hearing considered the first set of cases to have reached the 45-day mark that Bob just told us about without a lawyer on record. Those cases have to be tossed. Now, that's due to what's called the Lally Protocol that the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court, the highest court in the state, set in motion on July 3rd due to the huge backlog of unrepresented cases in the state. Throughout this month, indigent defendants, or those unable to afford their own attorneys without representation, have been released from jail if they had been detained for more than a week without representation, based on another prong of the protocol. And as the ongoing work stoppage of bar advocates, or those private attorneys who take on the cases of defendants too poor to afford their own attorneys, or what we generally call indigent defendants, continues with no end in sight, that round of dismissals, the first, will surely be followed by hundreds more. So the headline, hundreds of defendants put out on the street, is just the start. It's when I first saw that, I was somewhat shocked by it. Yeah, I was shocked. Bar advocates stopped work in late May to push for higher pay rates, which are established by the state legislature. The Supreme Judicial Court ruling came after the Committee for Public Counsel Services filed on bar advocates' behalf and for guidance on how to handle the backlog. The CPCS is the public entity that employs staff attorneys to represent indigent defendants, but those staff attorneys handle only 20% of the cases, whereas private bar advocates in a system that was set up by CPCS handle 80% of such cases. So bar advocates receive $65 per hour for district court level criminal cases, according to data that was provided by CPCS. These are the attorneys who have stopped working. Sean Delaney, an attorney who also works as a bar advocate and describes himself as on the front lines of the dispute, told the Herald earlier this month that there has been a degradation of the right of counsel in Massachusetts. Wow, those are big words, because, again, remember that under the Sixth Amendment of the United States Constitution and also the Declaration of Rights in Massachusetts, both, a person who is accused of a crime not only has the right to remain silent, has the right to be presumed innocent, but if they can't afford an attorney under those provisions I just mentioned in the U.S. Constitution and the Massachusetts Declaration of Rights, if they can't afford an attorney will be appointed for them. So if you're out there saying, who cares? This is a federal and state requirement that this be done. It is unsustainable for any recent graduate, Mr. Delaney said, willing to come in to do this very important work at $65 an hour. Many of them are saddled with exorbitant student loans before you can even get to food and shelter. And boy, if you look at rents anywhere, but in Boston, on Tuesday, Delaney told the Herald that there is one entity that could fix it, and that is the Massachusetts Commonwealth Legislature. Getting back to the hearing, over roughly 3 hours, BMC Chief Judge Tracy Lee Lyons, who we just saw, went through case after case across the entire municipal court network, not just from the Central Division where the hearing took place. Except for a few where it was determined that the defendant had a private attorney or the matter was a probation one, which wouldn't be affected by the protocol, Lyons was forced by the protocol to dismiss the case, usually with the same words. CPCS has made a good faith effort to secure representation, but has been unable to do so, she said. with only minor variation across the many cases. This case shall be dismissed without prejudice. All fees and fines are waived. And what that means is, if one is accused of an offense, whether it's A and B, whether it's shoplifting, whether it's a variety of other things that are handled at the district court level in Massachusetts, even if you do a plea, you often have to pay fines and fees. And in addition to the fine, every statute has a list of whether or not there's incarceration, how long the incarceration would be, but also a fine. But in addition to all of that, there's often a fee, a victim witness fee, or a head injury fee, or some other fees that the Commonwealth imposes, and that goes into various funds that are set up by the legislature. But the legislature isn't willing, apparently to date, to increase the pay of the bar advocates, who are making a lot less than the averages, as we pointed out earlier in this episode. The cases dismissed were often on crimes like drug possession or shoplifting, but many were on more serious charges, including a variety of assault charges. Those include general A and B, and then specialized A and B charges, like those against police officers or against family members. So imagine people, facing charges like that, and being a police officer, and they're just being set free. Really, Massachusetts? Really? Those people are charged with serious offenses, and they're being held. And in my view, they should have counsel, Attorney Robert Glotzer said. And that's his opinion, but it's supported by the Constitution of the United States and the Massachusetts Declaration of Rights. I do understand, and I absolutely support the need for higher pay for bar advocates, he said, but he added, you have to balance that off against people who are in custody without counsel. So it's not an easy balancing act, but it's something that has to be done. Well, isn't that the way it is in the law? We often talk about balancing, for example, balancing the right of a defendant to a fair trial against the right of the public to have access to a trial under the First Amendment. So a lot of things require a balancing act, and this particular balance that Attorney Glotzer talked about is something that needs to be addressed by the Massachusetts legislature. But lo and behold, there were, the last I checked, problems, and the legislature really was doing little or nothing. This being summer, they've got to get a budget out by the end of June, but this being summer, there's really little or nothing else. Now, here's an off article that is in the Massachusetts Lawyers Weekly. My regular viewers know that this is the publication. It's independent, but any attorney who cares in Massachusetts reads this. So it's kind of small, but what it says is bar advocates dispute Beacon Hill's forecast for labor crisis resolution. There is the governor of Massachusetts on the right, Maura Healey, with legislative leaders. And bar advocates said on July 28th that they have not been involved in any conversations with legislative leadership about a resolution to the labor crisis that has resulted in over 100 court cases being dismissed, even though top House and Senate Democrats suggested the situation could be fixed soon. So who's telling the truth? Is it the House and Senate leaders, or is it the bar advocates who say they haven't even been, contacted? Massachusetts House Speaker Ron Mariano and Senate President Karen Spilka are telling reporters that their teams continue to work on a solution to the pay dispute that has led the bar advocates to stop accepting new cases representing indigent defendants. Spilka called on the attorneys to reverse course in the meantime, contending that people are being hurt. We hope to get it resolved soon, but in the meantime, they should be working, Spilka told reporters on July 28th, following a private leadership meeting with Governor Maura Healey. So they say they're working on it. But the bar advocates themselves, who would be the ones that would be contacted, saying, hey, nobody's talking to us. So, I don't know whether the legislature in Massachusetts will just simply say, well, all right, we'll give them this and that's it, or whether they'll negotiate in good faith. So one would wonder what the legislature would think about the $566,000 that $566,000 that were given to Special Prosecutor Hank Brennan. Now, there's a defense attorney who turned special prosecutor for the Karen Reed case, and good grief, what about all the money they paid to him? And yet, nothing in terms of increasing the rate to the bar advocates. And this is a controversy that's been brewing for some time. So I wonder what our viewers would say about that. Let us know down in the bottom. We would love to know what your thoughts are. But let's take a look at what our viewers are saying about our last episode when we looked at the Brian Walsh case. And we also looked at the King case, in which Adam Lally, who was the prosecutor in Karen Reed's first case, Adam Lally, the prosecutor in Karen Reed's first case, actually had to go on the stand and explain in a case why he was only not even getting around to providing discovery 4 years after that case came up. So let me find my viewer comments. I see them on the screen, but I don't see them in the format that I need to see them. So here we go. Number 5, Kate Dance. Boy, they sure need a whole new DA's office and change out of all the people that work there. Obviously, that office doesn't follow any procedure. Just do what you want and keep on drinking. Disgusting. All right, again. That was with respect to the district attorney in Norfolk County not coming up with material on 6 subpoenas in a 2021 case. And here it is 4 years later. Comment 4 from Christine. Looks like the corruption of this office is finally getting some attention. It's funny to think when Karen Reed first alleged to be framed, she was laughed at. But the more evidence that came out, the more attention was put to other cases. And now it's not even surprising to hear of the lack of transparency, accountability, which looks more and more like corruption this office has gotten away with for so long. That's a long sentence, Christine. It's hard to read in one breath, but I agree with you. I sure hope this leads to the justice system being reformed everywhere. We'll see, won't we? Number 3 from WK8000. I feel like it always takes way too long for discovery in many states and towns. Is this because the police are manipulating the actual discovering and falsifying it to try to convict people? I don't know. WK in Massachusetts, whatever the prosecutor has is almost always or should be provided to the defense attorney at the arraignment. Here's a police report. And then by the pretrial conferences or motion hearings, which are common, they've got to turn over everything else, whether it's exculpatory or not, whether it's a Brady material item or not. We have automatic discovery in Massachusetts, as they do at the federal level and many states. And this stuff has got to be turned over. But for something to go for 4 years, as it did in our previous episode, it makes you scratch your head. It really does. We're getting down to it. Number 2, Feral AF. Absolutely love Bederow's rant on Lally's disgrace. He should be fired immediately and prosecuted criminally. How long have defendants sat in jail because he doesn't have the you-know-whats to step up to Proctor? Well, it's a good question. Bederow was on one of our previous episodes talking about, Mr. Lally going on the stand. And if you'd like, I will, if you didn't see that episode, I will link it down in the detail section down below, because it was a good episode. Markbederow answered my questions and more about how can it be in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that a case is pending for 4 years and the assistant district attorney still does not provide information that was sought in 4 search warrants. It's just, Nuts. Our final viewer comment for the week is Mag in Florida. Mag in Florida. No policy. I don't remember the theme in Norfolk County law enforcement. The corruption is systemic. Lawyers need to find every case he was involved with and get people jailed due to his misconduct. Should be released or at least a new trial. Well, I would think that a motion to dismiss would be in order. Whether that would be granted or not is a question. Another remedy would be not allowing the Commonwealth to use the evidence that they haven't provided, and or not to allow them to provide any evidence. I mean, to be accused of first degree and 4 years later, the Commonwealth still has not produced its evidence that was sought in 6 subpoenas. Apparently what Mr. Lally said on the stand was that material from about 1.5 of the subpoenas had been produced. But it seems like a case that cries out for some kind of a remedy. And so our final slide. Remember, during the Karen Reed trial, we were asking people how long had they been following the case and where were they following it from? And we got people from 75 different countries telling us that they were watching. And so I was going to retire the slide, but I decided not to retire the slide. There it is. It's in alphabetical order. I've kind of made it a little bit more readable, bolding all the countries. So if you are watching us from a country that is not on that list, let us know. If you are watching us from any country that's not on this list between Albania and Zimbabwe, please let us know. So we are looking for additional ideas for things that you would like to watch, different cases that you'd like to watch. I've gotten all kinds of ideas, and so now we're planning our fall episodes. If you have watched this far, please subscribe, like, and share with your friends. We don't try and sell you stuff. We don't sell you t-shirts. We don't sell you mugs. We don't sell you, what did I see? Aprons, kitchen aprons. That's fine. But we don't shill for that kind of stuff. We don't ask you for money. We are able to buy new equipment. We have a slightly new studio here. We didn't ask for money for it. So the only thing we ask is that you go down in the corner down there and click subscribe, like, share, tell your friends, give us some ideas for any future content that you have for us. We're looking at a bunch of different cases at this time. And the only other comment I would say is that if you're still with us at all this time, give us a summer themed emoji. If you stayed with us through this entire episode, some kind of a beach emoji, a palm tree, an umbrella, sand, the ocean, anything like that. Because you know what? Yikes. Summer goes really fast, especially here in New England where we are. So thank you for tuning in. Give us your comments, give us your likes, give us your subscribed, and whatever. Be nice. Whether you are in the grocery store, the gas station, or anywhere else, please remember to be kind to people. You don't know what they're going through. And the same goes for our comments section. We want you to comment, but be nice, be kind, be positive if you can. And thank you for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Have a good one.